Hello and welcome. I'm Kruijff-Gan and you are listening to the Multi-Woman & Co podcast. In this episode, I have a conversation with Ghanaan Edwards. She's a marketing manager at HourLux and she's also the co-founder of NPO Arnhem Together. We talk about self-transformation and integrating into a new culture and society. Her life's tapestry is quite an eclectic one. She started her career in the fashion industry in South Africa and landed up as a marketer in the Netherlands 6 years ago. A 180-degree transformation to say the least. She leads a non-profit organization for women which she co-founded 3 years ago. She often shares the story of unbelonging and integration. How to get comfortable in an uncomfortable place has serendipitously become her signature skill. Life is a constant process of recreation and reinvention. And according to her, it is what makes it so messy and absolutely extraordinary. Hello, welcome back to the Multi-Woman & Co podcast. I'm so delighted today that I have a fabulous woman in a podcast. Her name is Ghanaan Edwards, and she is a marketing manager and also a co-founder of the NPO Arnhem Together. It's the first English speaking network in Arnhem, which is in the Netherlands. And she's today here as my guest to tell more about her story and to share her wisdom. So, hello, Ghanaan. Good morning. How are you?
Hello, Claudia. So lovely to be with you this morning.
Yeah.
I'm very well. Thank you. Very excited to be on the Multi-Woman & Co platform with you. Very happy to be here today.
Yes, and I'm very excited to introduce you to the audience because we've known each other now for about a year, I think, and we've never met in person, but only online. But I really felt
we have a new age.
Yeah.
A new age virtual relationship.
Yes, but it's a good one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm so...
Yeah, it's been about a year ago, yes.
Yeah, and actually you were the one who inspired me to relaunch Multi-Woman, and that's the reason why I launched a podcast.
Wow, I feel completely humbled to hear that. We found each other via Instagram, and I think you found me via my personal page, and then via Arnhem Together, and then we slid into each other's DMs.
Yes, that's
like a modern day relationship, and then started communicating in that way.
Yeah, and you asked me one simple question: why did you stop with Multi-Woman? And that was the beginning of why did I stop Multi-Woman? And then, yeah, something happened.
You told me about it. Yeah, you told me about your concept, and I just thought it was so powerful. And when we spoke about Arnhem Together, we found a lot of crossover between Multi-Woman & Co and Arnhem Together. And I think that's what got the conversation going between us.
Yes, exactly. Because what I really admire in you and also the community is that this community is about women here in Arnhem, in the east of Netherlands, and Nijmegen as well. For the listeners who are not familiar with Arnhem or Nijmegen, it's in the Netherlands and it's in the east of the east area of the country. And you are the co-founder of Arnhem Together. And can you tell us why did you start Arnhem Together?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. I'm from South Africa. And I'm from Cape Town, and I've been in the Netherlands for 6 years now. Mm-hmm. And I think coming to the Netherlands, even though it's such a small country, it's really diverse between the different provinces and the different regions. And whereas the expat community has a lot of infrastructure and a lot of support in the major cities such as Amsterdam and The Hague and Utrecht, The eastern part of the country, like you said, where we are located, it's really not that supportive in terms of international community. So when I came here, I felt literally like a fish out of water.
Oh.
And I really lacked that support and the infrastructure to find my place in Arnhem, and also to find the place for my family. And it was by coincidence that I found a play group that my partner Sophie had started with a friend of hers as well. And that's where I got to meet a really interesting group of women through our children. And we had then said, you know, the kids are all growing up, and that little circle or that little play group will only serve up to a certain point when your kids are all grown up and then going off to school. We should really do something to empower women, because as we met some really dynamic women through this play group, you know, every single person had a very similar story. So everyone here was moving mostly as support to their partner, and they were then called the trailing partners. So often, 9 times out of 10, the husband would have a really interesting job opportunity. The woman would therefore have to give up her career from wherever she's from, and obviously support the husband and play a bigger role in terms of caregiver. As a result, we were sitting with a big community of these dynamic, talented women.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
And the girls of this play group and we actually started out as a steering committee of 8 women that actually founded Arnhem together. At the moment, it's myself and Sophie who are the 2 founders, and we are the ones that started this organization 3 years ago. And it was really out of sheer need and sheer motivation to create a really powerful platform where we could connect with like-minded women, where we could serve as a catalyst for conversation, where we could really be community builders and obviously provide these women with, first and foremost, a place of belonging and finding their friends. And the organizations, like I said, it's been in existence for this month, we're celebrating our 3-year anniversary as an organization.
Oh, wow.
But we still feel that there's so much more to do. There's so much more that we can actually evolve into. And we hope that the platform will actually become something bigger, where women can actually find job opportunities. And we have big dreams for Arnhem Together. But at the moment, it started out from a motivation where we could just get a really amazing community of women feeling strong and empowered and feeling like they belong in the city.
Yeah. So important.
That was the long answer.
Yeah, but it's so important. And like you said, most of the women come here to the Netherlands because their partner has an amazing job, and they follow their partner, which is quite logical. But you also had a very good position in South Africa, right? And you had to give up your own career.
Yes.
How was it for you?
I was one of those training partners.
Yes.
So a lot of the women that I was meeting through Arnhem Together, their stories had so strongly resonated with mine, because I could really speak from a first person point of view, because I was that person. I grew up in Cape Town, born and bred in Cape Town. My mom and dad are from Cape Town. My husband's from Cape Town. So we are from the southernmost tip of Africa. And obviously moving to the Netherlands, I felt like I was in a parallel universe. For the first 18 months of my time here, I honestly felt like, what have I done? But in South Africa, I studied at university, and I actually studied political science and psychology. And then I went on to do a postgraduate in marketing management, and went on a totally different trail as one's life does. Yes. You never land up where you expect to. And I landed up in the fashion industry in South Africa, and I was in corporates, and I worked for big corporate retailers in South Africa, like these fashion high street brands that we have here in Europe. So I worked all my life in corporates. I've worked the last company I worked with was a multinational company, and I was with them as a buying manager for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from a complete corporate machine, city slicker, to then having my life turn around in a 180-degree way to be a stay-at-home mom and support my husband. So temporarily, but yes, that was my quite a critical moment and quite a pivotal time in my life.
Yes,
so yes, I have a very
totally.
interesting journey coming from the fashion industry, and it was something that's in your blood. We used to call it the rag trade in South Africa.
Okay.
We clothing, and it's still something that is still a big love of mine.
Yeah.
But yes, it was a very interesting journey. I've learned so much about myself in corporate, and but I have learned much more about myself outside.
Okay, can you tell more about that? What did you learn?
I think when I came here, and it was quite interesting because when you are stripped literally of your reality and your familiarity, and your comfort zone, and you consciously make a decision to step away from everything familiar, to step into the unknown. Firstly, it's a leap of faith that you have to take, because you never know what will happen. And of course, you can say wherever my family is home, and my husband and I have a very strong foundation. We have a very good relationship. We have 3 kids. So wherever they are, yes, is home. But I really felt like I was stripped of a lot of things that used to define me.
Yeah.
So I, in my previous career, in my previous life, I would think of it as a previous life because it feels like that sometimes. I was really dependent on a lot of external affirmation to feel good about myself. And as much as I love the fashion industry, it is unfortunately still very ego-driven and very materialistic, superficial, for lack of better words. And you do get sucked into that. And your performance and your worth as a manager or as a person with status is very much only dependent on what people are saying about you, and how good you are at your job. And I found that how good I was at my job kind of became intertwined with who I was defining myself as a person. So I really used my previous role and my status really to define who I was, not really taking the time to actually figure out what really drove me. And only since moving here and having all of that stripped away, I've kind of had to rebuild myself and rebuild the building blocks of who Ghanaan is and what my values are and what really defines me, because coming here was really humbling. I didn't have that any longer. I had to give up a lot of material things to also come here. We had to sell our house and our car, and we literally started like a blank canvas as a family.
From scratch.
That in itself was quite a defining moment. And I really struggled for the first 18 months. I really struggled with the self and the ego. I really felt really lost. The intention was to take some time off after we moved here. So I came with a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 11-month-old, and a kitchen sink. And the idea was just to take some time off to spend time with the kids and to settle in the family. And then after a year or so, then to get back into the job market and start actively looking for a job, which also was so disillusioning.
Yes, why?
I thought that coming with my resume and coming with a really good level of education and such solid experience and such a good track record, I would literally like fall into the next job here. And that was not the reality, Claudia. It was, it was really difficult to actually crack into this job market. And a lot of the opportunities that in my industry were in Amsterdam, and obviously being, like you said, on the opposite side of the Netherlands. And it just was really tricky, not just from a logistics point of view. I also think that it's just really difficult as a foreigner, finding your place here and standing out amongst all the competition. And but that process was really difficult for me, to be very honest. I didn't get any luck, and I became very disillusioned and very depressed as a result of that.
Yeah.
I have my own viewpoints about that as well, where the job market here, I would feel personally, is not as inclusive as I thought it was. And only once you start living in a country, I guess you start understanding the nuances and how everything works versus obviously visiting a place. So for me, that was extremely difficult. And I thought that I would step back into my industry, and that didn't happen. And after a while, I had to expand after feeling sorry for myself for a while. I mean, I'm not that kind of person. I'm optimistic, and I just get on with things. I'm from a country that is so resilient, and I grew up in a culture like that with my own family. So, you just get up, you dust yourself off, and you try again. And I decided then to broaden my horizons and, look outside the scope of my industry. And that was when I was doing a couple of Dutch courses, and I was studying Dutch because obviously I wanted to fit in here and be able to communicate and to really find my place. And a big part of doing that in the Netherlands is by understanding Dutch. And I had coincidentally met a woman along the way that was starting her company in the Netherlands, and she was from Switzerland, and her name is Kilaine, and that's the company that I currently work with now.
Oh, wow.
HourLux. Yes. So it all kind of happens, and I thought, I believe that things happen absolutely at the right time, and that process
timing is everything.
Through of completely unlearning who I was and redefining and going through such an internal battle with my ego and getting back to my core value systems. I believe everything happened step by step for a reason, looking back at it now in retrospect, and the way people had come into my life absolutely at the right time, because I met some pivotal people that then I've gone off and started in an NGO with, and met somebody through a language course that I now work with in a really dynamic company. It's a partnership, and her partner's Dutch, and Alexander and Kilaine also stepped out of corporate coincidentally to find their own way in life, and wanted to play by their own set of rules. And I happen to be in that situation as well. So I work with a very small but absolutely global dynamic company where we just complement each other.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
That's a real match made in heaven when I hear your story. And in terms of, you were talking about unlearning some things about yourself and the more ego-driven image you had about yourself. Is that something that because of working in the fashion industry, or is it something that you have learned over the years from a very young age?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that I think my parents were always very focused on us getting an education, and a very good education. I grew up in apartheid South Africa.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting time in my life. And as a non-white woman, black woman, as I would classify myself, I just feel that there was a lot that I had to do and prove and do more, work harder, be tougher to find my place and to prove myself as a success. That's a whole other conversation for another podcast. But,
no, it's not.
Yes, but I think that it was quite an interesting dynamic in terms of how I grew up and the emphasis on being a success. My parents had worked really hard, and their generation had not gone and studied at a tertiary level. So for us to be given the opportunity to study further at university was a very important milestone for us as a family as well, because our history, unfortunately, skewed opportunities towards the privileged and against the underprivileged. Because when I was growing up in South Africa, apartheid existed for 50 years. And I remember when Nelson Mandela was released, I was 12 years old. Oh. And that was the last year of me being at primary school. So that was also quite an interesting time in my life when democracy had, the old South Africa was kind of falling, and I was part of that process, being a teenager and seeing democracy unfold in front of my own eyes. And what a crazy experience that was as well. So to come back to the question, all of those circumstances surrounding the way I was growing up had pushed me to be successful, and then landing up in an industry that was to a large degree based on, like I said, superficiality and ego. I'm not saying it was all bad, but those were the things that you really defined yourself as. So as you climb the corporate ladder, you could buy the fancier car, you could dress in a fancier way, and that becomes an extension of who you are, or so you think.
Yeah.
And unlearning all of that was coming here and actually being stripped of all of that, because at home I had I always refer to the Maslow hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
So I had my basic needs met, obviously, with a really great salary, house, food, everything was in place. Then I had my community around me, my friends and family. So you had your society where you really felt that you belonged. And if you move up in terms of the hierarchy and you get to the top of the triangle, I wasn't really spending a lot of time doing a lot of self-actualization, because I was just kind of, operating at that level. And I always say, when I came to the Netherlands, I had none of the basic needs met. So my triangle kind of had to become inverted and had to be turned on its head.
Yes.
Suddenly I had, of course, basic needs met, which were very privileged, but I had no sense of belonging.
No.
And with all of that taken away, it almost forced me to go a little bit higher in my awareness and my consciousness, and actually say, well, who are you? What actually defines you? What
are your values?
What makes you proud to be a person today? What value are you adding, not just to yourself, but to the community that surrounds you? And that was a very, very introspective and quite a spiritual process for me. Because, like I said, it wasn't easy, but it was a very humbling experience. And I had to go back to what my core values are. What kind of person what am I showing my kids? Kids don't do as you say, they mimic what you do. And not just for them, but also for myself.
Yes.
And had to do quite a bit of soul searching to find out what actually defines me. And I had to feel successful without the title. I had to feel accomplished without external affirmation.
Yeah.
I had to really dig into my own bank of strength to figure out who I was again.
Did you discover new things, or is it something that you have hidden for a long time? And I mean, of course, it's nothing really new, because you are the person that you are, and but sometimes we hide some characteristics or elements of ourselves in order to survive. And I think when I hear your story, there was more surviving than really thriving. And expressing your full potential, and the person that you are now, as the woman,
Yes.
the human that you are now, is so different and more whole and more complete.
Yeah, I just feel that I have more substance. And
Yeah.
of course it's also it goes hand in hand, I guess, I hope, with getting older and evolving, because I would hate to be the person, I'd hate, it's a strong word, I would not like to be the person I was 6 years ago or 10 years ago, because I think that the whole process of growing and evolving is such a beautiful thing. And yes, it had to take, I think that the moving year was definitely a catalyst to that change. But I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened had I stayed in South Africa. But I definitely think that having my external circumstances change around me was a big catalyst to the internal situation that I was going through. It may have taken a little bit longer to get to where I am, and I'm by no means, the evolved guru, but I'm looking forward to uncovering more layers about myself.
Sure.
But I did realize that I'm a lot more giving than I thought I was. I'm a lot more generous. I think that my perspective on, or the value that I place on family has definitely changed. The importance that I place on relationships and nurturing the relationships that are really important to me have become the pinnacle of my life. And I don't think that anyone's ever going to be remembered for what job they had or what status they had in society, but rather who they were as a person, and what acts of kindness or what value you actually had brought to your family or to your community. I never would have thought in a million years that I'd be a community builder. I was this egocentric corporate machine back in South Africa and working, 60 hours plus a week, and had literally no time to even have a balance of being a good mom or a good partner, much less a community builder. And the joy and gratification I get from playing such a special role in this community feels like such a privilege, that I can actually share my story in many ways and help someone to find their place. I think that for me was quite an interesting and surprising revelation, that I was actually here to serve my community. And I could do that once I was ready to step out of that world with myself and honestly be completely content with where I was. And the whole thing about money and status is so overrated.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
everyone wants to lead a comfortable life, and I'm not saying, yeah, obviously money is a means to an end. It's a means to a satisfying, comfortable life. But the amount of emphasis we place on that as someone's worth, I think, is quite sad.
Yeah.
And we don't ever get to ask someone, so what are you all about? So what do you do? Who are you? And give me a couple of words that you would use to describe yourself, and that would give me so much more insight into somebody, as opposed to asking them, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. I hardly can imagine that you were so different. I mean, how I know you now is you're so generous and you're doing such an excellent job with the community.
Yeah, I don't think I was ever in the space to allow that part of myself to flourish. I think
Yeah.
that I also believe one of my core values, actually, Claudia, is that I believe that people are inherently good. And that's what drives me. I believe that people are misunderstood and everyone has their own true north, but I do feel that people are inherently good.
Yeah.
And if you look at the world through those lenses, I think it could be quite a beautiful experience. And we all have the potential inside of us. Just sometimes, unfortunately, takes a shock or something drastic to happen in order for you to take a moment and take a step out and do a little bit of work to understand who you are, or who you've become, or work towards if you're not there yet, to work towards a vision of who you'd like to become.
Yeah.
Because I'm not by any means near to where I want to be, and I don't ever think I will die being the ultimate version of myself. But every day I can certainly do one small thing to get myself closer to that point. And that's also just the beauty and the mess and the complexity of being a human being, that we are just perfectly flawed.
Yeah, and sometimes it's also, like you said earlier, sometimes we are really hard on ourselves, and regardless of our gender or identity, people tend to be really hard on themselves. And sometimes you have to give yourself permission first to be the person you really love to be. And can you share your tools, in quotes, how you what you did to integrate in a new society or in a new country besides learning the language?
When I was much younger and I was studying, I read a lot of philosophies about being in the present. And I read a few things by Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now and the Celestian Prophecy, and, things that, when in inverted commas, self-help books became trendy. I was kind of on that bandwagon when I was much younger. And then getting into the rat race and not really having a lot of time for spiritual introspection or reflection, you kind of just ticking along. And when I came here, like you said, besides the practical tools that I've adopted by learning the language, part of the process was to become really aware of my present and immerse myself in what was happening right now, because I felt through all the challenges that I was going through, I was just kind of letting this experience also pass me by. And I remember when I was home with my daughter, and she was then 11 months, or between 11 months and 18 months at the time, to also just be in that moment with her. I remember on a Monday, I would do the laundry, and every Monday she would think it was the absolute best thing, like when I took off all the bedding and threw it in a pile on the floor, that she could go and dive into it.
Oh, I want that too.
I have these very distinct memories of little moments like that, where I felt I was never able to enjoy that with my older kids, because I was always rushing to get to the next point. And the amazing thing about emigrating was that even though it was really, like all the hardships and stuff, like, it also allowed me a pause, to hit the pause button. And when I hit the pause button, I could then say, well, wow, this is actually an amazing opportunity to be here, to have the opportunity to experience life from a totally different perspective. So bring yourself into the present, enjoy what you have right now, and as mediocre as it may be, into enjoy the present and to appreciate even the mundane things in life.
Yeah.
Because some of those mundane details are the fondest and most vivid memories that I have right now. So for me, a big thing, and I still do it, and I'm not perfect, like I said, but I try at least once or twice a day to just kind of pull myself back. And once you realize that I am here right now, I don't have yesterday, and obviously it sounds quite cliche, but tomorrow is not a guarantee. It kind of opens up a whole new realm of possibilities and clarity when you are in the moment that you are right now.
Yeah.
So that was quite a powerful tool that that I've used and would like to think that I'm continuing to use to tap into the potential that I am in the present.
Yeah, and reconnect with yourself at those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that for me, I can't. I mean, if I were to summarize it, I would say that is definitely a big tool. And the other one is empathy, because the society is very different to what I grew up with in South Africa. As I mentioned before, I grew up in a very racially segregated society.
Mm-hmm.
And I have memories of not my mom saying, well, we can't go to that beach or to that park. And I'm like, why? Why can't we go there? Oh, no, because it's only for certain people. You know, it's for white people only. And I would look at my skin and go, but mom, like I am white,
Oh,
you
so
know,
cute,
as a little girl. And I just couldn't understand, you know. But with all of that being said, after growing up in such a multicultural, multi-dimensional society, we in South Africa actually grew up with so much respect and empathy for people of different colors and histories and races. And it was such a melting pot of excitement. And then coming here, it's quite different.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have people come up to me and say, well, you know, but you're not Black, so how can you be from South Africa? You know, and things like that used to offend me quite a lot. But the second tool, coming back in a very roundabout way, that I've had to learn while being here was to be tolerant, to practice tolerance quite a lot as a coping mechanism, because people's intentions, I would like to think, were good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's just a different norm living here in a society such as the Netherlands compared to South Africa, where you don't really see people like me every day on the streets, and I do feel a little bit misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just understanding that everyone's asking from a point of curiosity, you know, so what is history? You know, in South Africa, there are many people that look like me, that have different cultural influences, that have come from their mom's side and their dad's side, that have, you know, formed them into the Rainbow Nation.
That's a beautiful word, Rainbow Nation.
And,
wow.
you know, coming here, I had to really be quite tolerant about the fact that it's not as diverse. And maybe it's a function of where we are. You know, we're not in a big city, just for the listeners to also be aware. It's not like we're in Amsterdam or The Hague. It's a small Dutch city. And I was coming from a big city. So also that mentality was quite different. But it's a consistent thing that I need to work on in terms of acceptance and tolerance, and everyone's perception's different, right?
Yeah, but there are so many perspectives, and yeah, sometimes I do agree with you. It's what you do for yourself, the tolerance and being more compassionate, maybe. But sometimes it's hard because when you face people who are not so compassionate, it's quite a challenge sometimes. Or it can be a challenge.
But then I also think that what a beautiful experience it is for me to be the teacher of that.
Yeah.
So yes, you may not understand, but let me explain a different story to you, and let me explain, you know, how things possibly work in a different part of the world. And that's what I also love about Arnhem Together, is that we are a platform where we can share our stories. And I do believe that people have more similarities than differences. We all want the same thing. We all want to be loved. We all want to be in healthy relationships. We all want to feel protected and comforted. And, you know, if you strip away all of the other things that people use as masks, at the end of the day, we all want that at our core as human beings.
Yes.
So I also feel it's quite a privilege that I'm maybe misunderstood a lot more often than I am here in the Netherlands than I am at home. It's also an opportunity for me to share my reality and be the teacher, like I said, of a different way of being.
Absolutely. And it's It's a very strong way of dealing with these situations.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that makes me feel, I mean, I'm also human. It makes me feel a bit uncomfortable as well. But then what is it that's actually making me feel uncomfortable? Is
Mm-hmm.
it what the person has said, or is it something that I have from my past that's a trigger that's making me react in a certain way? So I've also had to become a lot more conscious
Yeah.
of the reasons that I may react or think in a certain way. It's been interesting, and I find living here really, really interesting. I find that, yeah, the Dutch people are one of the most polite cultures that I've ever come across, you know. And I think once it's not as open as it obviously in South Africa. Like you'd meet someone from South Africa and feel like you automatically have known them for 10 years, and it's a very guarded culture. But a lot of people that I've come across have allowed that culture to influence their personality,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm steadfast in being who I am. And I think the minute you open up to someone, it kind of also gives them the permission, because you show somebody how to treat you, right? So if
Yes.
I'm open and friendly and say something maybe like a bit crazy or wacky that they never expected,
Yeah.
and then you kind of like get a different reaction compared to what you initially thought. And then you kind of find, oh, wow, we actually have this human click,
Yeah.
you know, despite our history, despite our varying points of view, you know. And I kind of feel that the more open I am, the more responsive people are. And I'm just going to continue doing that, because I think that, yeah, we don't need to feel embarrassed. And it's
No, not
so
at
cool
all.
to feel vulnerable. And if you show that you are not perfect and you can express your vulnerabilities and your mistakes, you know, hopefully people around you will also feel comfortable to fall, knowing that it's a comfortable place to fall, you know, that they'll have friends that will help them get up if they cannot do it themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And
And
that we like you said, we have more in common than we think.
yes, we definitely are more, I always say we are definitely more similar than different.
How do you see the future for your children? Because based on your own experience and the person that you are, but also the mother of your children, is there something that you want to pass down to them, or is it more that you say, okay, I'm here and they have to find out themselves?
I grew up in a very traditional family
Mm-hmm.
where there was clear boundaries and rules, and I kind of have stepped away from that a little bit with my family structure, because I feel that kids need the space to explore and to have many interests. And of course, education is really important. That's one of the things that I kind of have adopted from my parents, that I am placing a big emphasis on my kids to get the best education that they can. Obviously, being here, we're in a really fantastic position where they could study in the Netherlands and work, and the world is really their oyster. But really to explore what makes them happy. I think that I wasn't really allowed the space to do that as a
Mm-hmm.
child, and the freedom because of the way I was raised, and my parents being quite protective, and there was a lot of religious dogma that also shaped my experience as a child, which I really rebelled against from a very early age.
Okay.
And I would love my kids to, obviously within reason, I'm still obviously, protecting and looking after their best interests, but really allowing them the space to fly
Mm-hmm.
and to not live vicariously through them. You know, their success is not my success. Their success is their success. I'm merely the conduit to provide that for them. So if
Yeah.
they could grow up with the feeling of freedom to really lead a life that fits who they are, that would be the most amazing accomplishment, that I can provide another human being that happens to be my child. I think that, I mean, unfortunately, safety is a big thing at the moment. In South Africa, when we grew up, we could still play on the streets and have a really cool childhood, similar to what the Dutch kids are having right now. And therefore, the Dutch kids are one of the happiest, right? Globally.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I remember my childhood playing on the streets and playing with the kids in the neighborhood and being completely, like free. And at the moment, because of how the situation has unfolded in South Africa and because of the political situation, unfortunately, safety is not as guaranteed as it is here, to put it mildly. As a woman, as a child, you are an easy target and you are always vulnerable. And one of the big things I enjoy about being here is that freedom is actually supposed to be a human right, not a privilege. And I also consider my kids very lucky to still be growing up in a society where they are relatively safe.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of my friends and their kids at the moment currently in South Africa are not having the same experience.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a lot of crime at the moment, and I'm not saying, obviously, not saying it's bad or all bad, but as a woman in South Africa, I always had to be on my guard. When I was driving alone, when I used to leave the office building and used to walk to my car in the evening, I used to have to get somebody to accompany to my car if it was dark, for example, and certain places you have to avoid, certain access to the city and to spaces was very limited. And that's also what I want for my kids right now, to have the access to freely move, in a city, in a community where they can also have access to activities and opportunities.
It's so important, like you said. It's a human right, the safety and the freedom, but it's unfortunately it's not for everybody.
No, I mean, South Africa is merely one example of where safety is not a given in your daily life. I can think of many other countries. It's such a beautiful country, and I really hope that over time things will it's going to take generations, because it's taken generations to get it to this point, and it's going to take generations to rebuild it and to rehabilitate it. I sometimes feel a bit hypocritical being here, to be honest, because I feel that I should be in my country, serving my country and playing this role in my own community.
Oh, really?
Because a lot of people that have had a good level of education have left the country. They've contributed to the brain drain of South Africa, and it's indeed those people that we need in the country to move it forward. Yeah. So in a way, I also feel a bit torn. I think as a person living outside of your own country, you also have to contend with this being the reality of your existence, that in one part of your life, you're going to feel like one foot is in one place and another foot is in another place, and your heart is somewhere and your head is somewhere.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I feel like I'm
feeling spread out
in like different directions. And I think that's just the reality of being an international person, an immigrant, a foreigner living in a country that's not your own.
Yeah.
Consciously pulling myself back.
Yes.
I am here right now, and I am here for a purpose. And let me celebrate this moment that I have to be here, and to still figure out what my purpose is for being here. And if I'm destined to be back home one day and serve a purpose in my own country, in my community, then I have to have faith, just like I had a leap of faith to move here, that a leap of faith will lead me back to where I belong, ultimately.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that thought. Yeah.
So it's a bit emotional talking about it, because I'm feeling quite homesick, and so I have these things that I also wrestle with every day. But we push through. It makes us stronger, builds our character, makes us more resilient, and we figure out how much stronger and resilient we are compared to what we initially thought. And you kind of go, wow, I can do this,
Is that me?
The human spirit can do this. And just always trying to be conscious of that.
What are the things that you do to lift up your spirit?
We spoke a little bit before, and I said I've recently discovered running.
Oh, yeah.
And then I sprained my ankle. Murphy's Law. I really enjoy being outdoors. I'm such a nature lover. And of course, being in Arnhem and this part of the Netherlands, we're so blessed to have such amazing beauty and nature around us.
Mm-hmm.
that I just kind of suck it up. So I'm in nature all the time. I go for walks. Can't wait to get back there running again. Obviously, I enjoy hanging out with my family. I also absolutely love cooking because it's a moment where I can just immerse myself in the act of cutting and chopping and being in the moment as well, without, because often my mind is filled with zillion and one thoughts
Yeah.
at the same time, and to-do lists
Racing minds. Yeah.
and cooking is a little bit of my therapy, where I really enjoy trying new things and experimenting, and then feeling nostalgic and cooking things that my mom taught me or from home. So that's become my happy place. And of course, I love what I do. I mean, I think I'm also in such a privileged position to work with such great people in my community, where I learn so much from the people that I meet along the way. And of course, meeting someone like you through Arnhem Together has also been extremely special, people that I never would have actually met if I didn't, if I wasn't part of the community as part of Arnhem Together. And then loving what I do at HourLux as well. Work with such amazing people, and we import luxury interior brands. And it's kind of really cutting edge, innovative brands that people don't need in their homes, but really want.
What?
So that kind of feeds a little bit of my previous character with.
Yeah, exactly. That's really funny. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I don't know, we don't always have to be all spiritual and connected all the time. And sometimes it's kind of cool to also be a little bit frivolous and superficial. You know, we kind of made out of all of these layers as a person. And I don't want to feel I cannot be that at the expense of being something else. I kind of want to embrace all of those parts of me.
Exactly. And it's the full spectrum. And
yes,
actually being spiritual is the full spectrum of everything.
Yes.
And like you said earlier, some things were ego driven in the fashion industry, but I think I've learned that my ego can be very funny too.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, they say you cannot experience the light without having experienced the dark.
Yeah.
So you cannot experience the self without having experienced the ego. And I find that all the bitter and the sweet and all the paradox of life. So I am truly blessed to also work with this interesting company. And as people are spending more time at home, we're creating little cocoons for ourselves. And that's the industry that I'm working in right now, in the interior world.
They have so many not so many, but really beautiful products. And you showed me one of the beautiful lamp. Maybe you can tell more about it.
So I spoke about what I do is to obviously lead the listeners into the next exciting bit of this podcast, is that HourLux and myself, we are giving away a really beautiful product, which is one of the brands that we work with, which is called Daiki Concept. And Claudia will post something, I'm sure, a little bit when you publish the podcast. You will explain.
Absolutely, and I will also post a picture.
But I work with, like I said, I work with some really beautiful brands. But this particular lamp that we are giving away is called Bird, and it's the brand is called Daiki Concept, and it's a Taiwanese brand. And it's a couple that actually had started this company themselves. So they're husband and wife, and they're based in Taiwan. And they were also really passionate about creating beautiful interior accents for your home. And they work with traditional craftsmen in a district in Taiwan that specializes in porcelain. And everything's made by hand in this specific district, and all done in a very traditional way. But the word Daiki, which is where Daiki Concept comes from, it actually comes from an ancient Chinese saying. It means to take time to become great and to mature, and to emphasize that the best things in life require more dedication. the philosophy that they also built on is that design, just like life, is not made up of thin air, but rather comes from a process of repetitive experiments and revision. And why I really love working with this brand is that it resonates so strongly with what I've been sharing with you and your listeners today, is the process of repetition or revision and learning and unlearning is kind of what shapes us into who we ultimately become. Or not become. We ultimately are becoming. I don't ever think that we reach an end point in our evolution.
We're evolving, like you said earlier.
And I'm very, very pleased to be able to give away a beautiful bird lamp to one of our lucky listeners. And like I said, Claudia, you will share more details about that.
Absolutely. It's I feel very honored to be able to offer this giveaway on behalf of you and HourLux. No, is it HourLux or Daiki?
A Daiki Concept is one of the brands.
It's one of the brands, but this giveaway is from HourLux.
Yes.
So the lucky person is having this beautiful, beautiful lamp. Absolutely. Before we end this episode, what would you like to share as your lesson or advice for the audience?
I think that, it's pretty much a summary of what I've been saying to you, Claudia, that it may not feel, the place that you are right now may not feel like it's a good fit or even a good match, or you may have lots of questions and doubts about where you are right now. But my advice would just be to take a step back, and even if things aren't perfect in your opinion, if you bring yourself back to the present and immerse yourself in what you actually have, focus on what you have versus how things should be, I think that it will be such a beautiful opportunity for you to change your perspective and acknowledge where you are. I think, like I said to you, being here right now, I've realized that certain things years ago have happened absolutely at the right time and for the right reason. And this moment that you are in right now is one of those defining moments. We just will realize it later. And it would be quite amazing if we were to be present. We could also realize it a lot sooner than later. Appreciate where you are right now and allow yourself to bloom and flourish where you are. I think that creates a different point of reference.
To add something, it's not a status quo where you are now. You are still evolving.
Absolutely. And just, also don't take life so seriously, I understand things have really been really hard for a lot of people. Despite COVID, life is just not equal for everybody. It's not, we're not all, unfortunately, allowed, or we weren't all given the same privileges in life.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just to appreciate what you are all about and how far you've come, and acknowledge yourself in this moment, I think is quite a powerful step to acceptance. It could open up such amazing doors later, but somehow we just become tangled in the mess of everything that we can't see the wood from the trees. And just take a little bit of a breather and time out and give yourself a pat on the back for all you have achieved and for how far you've come, because it's a lot bigger than what you actually think it is.
Wow. Thank you. That was a really beautiful advice and also a life lesson.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
We need to have a glass of bubbles now or something.
Thank you so much. And
thank you so much.
We enjoyed our conversation. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it as well. And wishing everyone a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye.
I hope to connect with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for your time and for listening. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for free notifications. Take care of you, and as always, wishing you a beautiful day.